Hello and welcome to the Night Watch Show. Today we will spend a bit of time going over the top news headlines related to the novel coronavirus and essentially provide an objective, clear summary without spin, without politics, just the news, top level down. Today it was reported by the Philippine Health Ministry 25 new coronavirus deaths, unfortunately, and 264 additional infections. That's just out in the last 3 minutes. So Philippine Health Ministry reported 25 new coronavirus deaths, 264 additional infections. Also today, out recently, Singapore's health ministry confirms 884 new coronavirus cases. That is quite an increase in the number of cases that they've been receiving lately. At this point, the city-state's total number of infections is at 24,671. Also in today, there is an analysis that Asia's pandemic stimulus may in fact slow the demise of coal, which is interesting. So coronavirus hammers the global fossil fuel demand, as we probably realize. Coal plants offer governments quick economic boosts, and projections relying on China, Japan, and South Korea funding. New plants put global warming goals at risk. So essentially, just out the story, coal power plant construction will push ahead in Asia despite falling electrical demand and environmental concerns as policymakers prioritize boosting economies crippled by the coronavirus pandemic, analysts say. Fossil fuel demand will plummet this year as lockdowns sap electricity use, as we've seen happen. The International Energy Agency said in a report last month. The European Union, International Monetary Fund, and the United Nations have said that marks a once-in-a-generation opportunity to launch a green recovery, which includes Asia joining the global trend of ending support for coal power. But there are already signs that China and other Asian giants like South Korea and Japan will steer recovery funds into struggling coal-focused state financiers, equipment suppliers, and construction firms. That could create a short-term jolt at the cost of efficiency and environmental damage, analysts say. So moving on to Thailand, there's a report of 2 new coronavirus cases and no new deaths, which is good news that there's no new deaths. So Thailand on Tuesday reported 2 new coronavirus cases, no new deaths, bringing the total to 3,017 cases for Thailand and 56 deaths since the outbreak started in January. Asian stocks set to fall on growing second virus wave fears. That was out this morning. So there is some concern over a second wave of the virus, which we all hope doesn't happen, of course. So that is some of the breaking news in just today. Now moving on to other parts of the world. The Australian Soccer League could restart in the first week of June after the coronavirus break. That came from a league official, so there is a chance that that will happen in the first week of June. We sure hope it does. Great to see sports resuming. There was just a UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship bout that occurred recently, just this last weekend, which it's great to see that sports are starting to reemerge. Another story out, coronavirus epidemic could deal a mortal blow to Spain's struggling bullfighting world. Top bullfighting festivals are canceled. The lockdown threatens the already struggling industry. Anti-bullfighting activists welcome its plight, its demise. Also, there are a lot of jobs at stake, of course. So another story regarding Uganda. Uganda's long-serving president has said it would be wrong to hold a presidential election due early next year, which would be in 2021, if the coronavirus persists, signaling for the first time a possible postponement in the election. To have elections when the virus is still there, it will be madness, the 75-year-old president proclaimed. Spain ordered a 2-week quarantine for incoming travelers from May 15th. So if you're heading to Spain, the Spanish government has ordered a 2-week quarantine for all travelers coming to the country from May 15th in a bid to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus after one of Europe's strictest lockdowns helped slow the epidemic in Spain. So there's still some efforts to ensure it's controlled. Incoming travelers will have to remain locked in and will only be allowed to exit for grocery shopping, going to health centers, and in case of a situation of need, an official order published on Tuesday said. The quarantine has been enforced for all travelers coming to Spain between May 15th and at least May 24th, when the state of emergency is due to end. The quarantine order can be extended jointly with possible state of emergency extensions. Spain has so far extended its restrictions 4 times since mid-March. Okay. Looking for some more news to bring up. Tokyo confirmed 28 new coronavirus cases. Nippon TV reported. So Tokyo, confirmed 28 new cases of coronavirus infection on Tuesday, marking the 7th straight day the daily tally has stayed below 40, Nippon TV reported. So that's just in from Tokyo. Okay, Japan financial minister says no tax cuts for the time being to counter the pandemic. That was mentioned. Japan is not considering tax cuts at this time, also including a reduction in sales tax for the time being as a way of easing economic pain. So that's not under consideration at this time. Japan's fiscal condition is in a severe state and will likely turn more dire due to the pandemic, also told Parliament. Cutting tax isn't something I have in mind for the time being, also said when asked by a lawmaker whether the government could cut tax as part of the efforts to support an economy suffering from the fallout of the pandemic. Let's move on to Russia. Russia reports 10,899 new coronavirus cases, surpassing the UK tally. So on Tuesday, that was reported, bringing the nationwide total past that of Britain to 232,243 in Russia, the 3rd highest total worldwide. The country's coronavirus response center said the death toll from the virus rose by 107 people to 2,116. Well, some more news. Hong Kong police chief admits undesirable behavior towards the media at a recent protests. Moving on to the United Kingdom. Britain will on Tuesday announce changes to the program that is paying the wages of more than 6 million workers at businesses affected by the coronavirus, its health minister said. Britain's finance minister will make a statement on the government's economic package. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said on Monday that Sunak would speak about the coronavirus job retention scheme, which pays employers 80% of the wages of staff who are on temporary leave. Obviously, it can't last forever, and we are going to have to make changes. He's going to announce the details of that, Health Secretary Matt Hancock told LBC Radio. When asked if they would cut the payments to 60% of earnings, Hancock said, "I'm not going to steal the words from Rishi's mouth, so there, in any case, are changes coming." Okay, just in some more news. Scouring for some more updates that may be of interest to listeners at this time. So Norway shatters wealth fund spending cap amid the pandemic. Norway will sharply raise spending this year from its $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund, exceeding a self-imposed cap for the first time in over a decade to aid on the economy hobbled by the coronavirus pandemic. The withdrawal from the fund is projected to hit a record 419.6 billion crowns, which is 40.6 billion US dollars, a revised budget from the finance ministry showed on Tuesday, up from 243.6 billion crowns forecast last October. Quite a bit of news from around the world on the coronavirus COVID-19. Ryanair to recommend face masks on board and ban toilet queues, so no waiting in line for toilets. So they're recommending that all passengers wear face masks on board when it reopens 40% of its route network on July 1, and customers will be required to ask crew to use the toilet. Europe's largest low-cost carrier, announced on Tuesday. And I imagine that will probably continue with other airlines as well. So some more updates on coronavirus. U.S. President Donald Trump said he opposed renegotiating the Phase 1 trade deal on Monday after Chinese-run state newspaper The Global Times reported some government advisors in Beijing were urging fresh talks. Rising U.S.-China tensions over the coronavirus outbreak have cast the trade deal between the two countries and proposed talks on a Phase 2 deal into doubt. The Global Times said that malicious attacks by the United States have ignited a tsunami of anger among Chinese trade insiders after China made compromises in the Phase 1 pact. WHO officials urged extreme vigilance on Monday as countries began to exit from lockdowns. This is from the World Health Organization, shifting gears, stressing that early studies point to lower than expected antibody levels against the COVID-19 disease within the general population, meaning that most people remain susceptible. So that's been a topic of ongoing discussion for quite some time regarding, can we catch it again once we've had it? And according to WHO officials, it seems that the antibodies are lower than expected and people can remain somewhat susceptible. Dr. Mike Ryan, head of the World Health Organization's emergencies program, warned countries that have lax measures in place to be wary of counting on herd immunity to halt the spread of COVID-19, saying this is a really dangerous calculation. Moving on to economic boost. Once Australia removes most social distancing restrictions by July, its GDP will rise by 6.5 billion each month, Treasurer Josh Frydenberg was expected to tell lawmakers on Tuesday in a speech updating them on his budget planning. Okay, moving on a little bit. Testing 11 million in 10 days. The Chinese city of Wuhan, the epicenter of China's coronavirus outbreak, plans to conduct nucleic acid testing over a period of 10 days. An internal document seen by Reuters showed, and two sources familiar with the situation said, with every district told to submit a detailed testing plan by Tuesday. The city of 11 million people, this is Wuhan, reported its first cluster of new infections over the weekend after a month's lockdown was lifted on April 8th. These plans come as global alarm was sounded on Monday over a potential second wave of coronavirus infections after Germany reported that the reproductive rate of the pathogen had risen above 1. So a resurgence is unfortunately something that's being taken into account at this time. Moving on to a world view. Worldwide coronavirus cases passed 4.19 million, with the death toll at over 285,100. United States, 80,606 deaths, 1,353,609 total cases, which is the highest of all. And in screening through all the various countries, the British Virgin Islands come out in the best shape, it appears, with 1 death and 7 cases. Mauritania, 1 death and 8 cases. Suriname, 1 death and 10 cases. A number of other countries have really fared extremely well compared to others in this area. Checking for any more top news that may be of interest to you at this time. So global commercial fishing falls 6.5%. So there's a drop in, of course, which makes sense, fishing. Closure of markets, restaurants hurt demand for fish, obviously. That makes a lot of sense. China fishing activity fell 40% for January 25 through March 25 period of time. So 40% reduction in the China fishing activity. UK fishing activity down 26% for year to date as of April 28th. So global commercial fishing activity for 2020 fell by around 1 million hours as of the end of April, a 6.5% decline over the 2 previous years, the result of plummeting demand caused by coronavirus lockdowns, according to Global Fishing Watch. Fishing fleet spent 14.4 million hours on the water for the year so far to April 28th, a decline from an average of 15.4 million hours for the same year-to-date period of 2018 and 2019, according to the nonprofit organization that tracks fishing operations worldwide. So it's great to know that there is such information available, and hopefully we'll bounce back from that pretty quickly, as that industry does affect so many. Also, some news in from China. China saying it's not yet time to relax the coronavirus measures out of Beijing's. China's health authority said on Tuesday that the reappearance of local clusters of coronavirus cases in recent days suggests that counter-epidemic measures cannot be relaxed yet. While prevention and control efforts have normalized, that does not mean measures can be eased. Mi Feng's spokesman at the National Health Commission said at a media briefing. Wuhan on Monday reported its first cluster of coronavirus infection since a lockdown on the city, which has been some time ago. The original epicenter of the outbreak in China, of course, as you know, was Wuhan. It was lifted a month ago, so the additional cases obviously is cause for quite a bit of concern at this point. Moving on to additional news. UK supermarket Morrison's sales get coronavirus lockdown boost. May 12th out of London, British supermarket group Morrison's on Tuesday reported a 5.7% rise in group like-for-like sales in its latest quarter, with demand boosted by the country's coronavirus lockdown, but it said its costs were also higher during the pandemic. Morrison's, Britain's fourth largest supermarket group after Tesco, Sainsbury's, and Asda, said retail sales rose 5.1% in the 14 weeks to May 10 as it was helped by consumers stocking up late in March. But like rival stores, Morrison's also said that the more volatile trading environment combined with social distancing measures and a high level of staff absences meant that its operations were more costly. So there are obviously a lot of factors to consider despite an increase in profit. Okay, moving on to more news that may be of interest. So some good news out of Panama. Panama is starting to reopen the economy as coronavirus infection rates fall. So Panama announced plans on Monday to begin a phased reopening this week of its economy, including e-commerce, mechanical workshops, and fishing, after slowing the spread of coronavirus infections. The reopening will take place in 6 phases from Wednesday, weighing factors such as virus transmission, its strength and economic impact, said Commerce Minister Raymond Martinez. Earlier on Twitter, President Laurento Cortizo said, "Let's not let our guard down and let's comply with sanitary measures," adding, "This is everyone's responsibility." So there is some good progress coming in Panama as far as reopening. Germany's confirmed coronavirus cases rise by 933 to 170,508, which is certainly a big number. The death toll rose by 116 to 7,533. And as mentioned earlier, Asian stocks were stumbling as of earlier this morning on fears of a second wave of coronavirus hitting. Also, oil being up. Horse racing in Britain is planned for a return in June, for those of you interested in horse racing. Just in some breaking news, South Korea investigators combed digital data to trace club coronavirus cluster. So out of Seoul, just now, just in the last few seconds, South Korean authorities were combing through mobile phone data, credit card statements, and CCTV footage on Tuesday to identify people who visited nightclubs at the center of one of the capital's biggest novel coronavirus clusters. More than 100 new cases linked to the nightclubs have brought fears of a second wave of infections in a country held up as a coronavirus mitigation success story. So this new wave of infections is quite a concern. Health authorities have tracked and tested thousands of people linked to the nightclubs and bars in Seoul's nightlife neighborhood, but want to find others who they have not been able to identify yet. Authorities fear that the fact some of the establishments were known as gay bars might be putting people off coming forward for testing in a country where homosexuality is for many people still taboo. We are using telecom station information and credit card transactions from the nightclubs to identify 1,982 of those who are not available, health ministry official mentioned at a briefing. So that's certainly a concern that just came in, breaking news out of South Korea. Other news that's just in, an Israeli soldier was just killed by a rock thrown during a West Bank raid out of Jerusalem. An Israeli soldier died after being struck in the head by a rock thrown from a rooftop during an arrest raid in the occupied West Bank on Tuesday, the military said. The incident was a departure from a relative lull in lethal violence in the West Bank, as Palestinians and Israelis have curbed movements and, to a degree, cooperated on measures in response to the coronavirus crisis. So unfortunately, this kind of breaks that period of time where violence had to come to a real pause since the beginning of the novel coronavirus outbreak. So that is it for today's live episode of breaking news related to the novel coronavirus. I hope you found this information helpful and wish you all the best. Thank you for joining the Night Watch.